Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the second part of the two-part webinar on political rights and movements in ASEAN, uh, where we seek to shed light, on the dynamic democratic pathways in Southeast Asia, focusing on three key trends: democratic gains, underlying tensions, and the growing role of the citizen action in civil society in shaping election and reforms across the region. In the first part of the webinar last week, we heard from Ms. Asia Trilwina, who shared key insights from ANFREL's pre-election assessment in the Bangsamoro region of the Philippines, including the challenges and opportunities around electoral inclusion following the postponement of the Barm parliamentary elections. Professor Duncan Macargo, meanwhile, provided a timely update on Thailand's political situation, from the judicial removal of the Prime Minister to the prospects of early elections and the resilience of civic movements amid ongoing democratic strain. Together, these presentations highlighted both the risk and democratic openings unfolding across the region, setting the stage for today's discussion, which we hope would help deepen our understanding of the region's shifting democratic landscape and reflect on how grassroots movements, electoral reformers, and engaged citizens are helping to shape the path ahead. Before we proceed with the presentations, allow me to introduce our speakers for today. Our first speaker is Mr. Janu Rangel Suarez. He's an independent analyst, researcher, and lecturer with extensive expertise in justice, rule of law, and human rights. He holds a master's in international relations and human rights from the University of Auckland. He has conducted research for the Asia Foundation and Resonance Global Projects, contributing to initiatives promoting rule of law and human rights. Janu has consulted on USAID projects focused on education, youth, and good governance, strengthening institutional frameworks for equitable justice. He managed UNDP Justice System Program, enhancing access to justice, and the UNODC Anti-Corruption Project, fostering transparency and rule of law. His role as country lead for the American Bar Association Rule of Law Initiative in Timor-Leste until February this year highlighted his leadership in advancing legal systems and human rights protections. He is an adjunct lecturer at Paragon International University in Phnom Penh, teaching courses on government and politics in Southeast Asia, regional security and refugees, and international migration, where he integrates perspectives on justice and human rights. Our next speaker is Mr. Muhammad Faisal bin Abdul Aziz. Mr. Aziz is the former president of the Muslim Youth Movement Malaysia from 2019 to 2023 and deputy chairperson of the Coalition for Clean and Fair Election from 2018 to 2020. He is actually currently the chairperson of PERSI. He is an accomplished professional with an LLM from Mara Technology University and LLB and Shara degrees from the International Islamic University, Malaysia. Faisal has played a pivotal role building bridges in an inclusive society via the Bangsa Malaysia campaign during his tenure as ABIM president. Notably, he received a federal honor for his outstanding contributions. Actively engaged in several organizations, including a grassroots community initiative known as Adab Youth Garage, Faisal is also an International Visitor Leadership Program alumnus, a professional exchange program aimed at emerging leaders. Last but not the least is Ms. Titi Angrayani, who serves as member of the advisory board of the Association for Elections and Democracy, or PERLUDEM, as well as a non-permanent lecturer in the field of constitutional law studies at the Faculty of Law, University of Indonesia. She is known as a practitioner in the electoral field who has more than 20 years of experience engaged in research and advocacy for elections and democracy, in Indonesia and globally. Currently, Ms. Titi is pursuing her doctoral degrees at the Faculty of Law, University of Indonesia. In 2017, together with Kofi Annan and a number of other world figures, she won the trust of the Democracy Ambassador from the International IDEA for her work in promoting democracy and free, fair, and democratic elections. She has been involved in international election monitoring missions in Nepal, the United States, Australia, Myanmar, Cambodia, the Philippines, Malaysia, and Sri Lanka. Good morning, Faisal, Janu, and Titi. Welcome to today's webinar.
Morning, John.
So each of our speakers today have been given a brief on the topic that they will be covering. We have allocated 10 to 15 minutes per speaker for the presentation. In the interest of time, I will be providing a 2-minute left reminder so that the speakers can wrap up their presentation. The presentations will be followed by the open forum before we formally close the webinar. For those of you who are watching this webinar live via ANFREL's Facebook, LinkedIn pages, and ANFREL's YouTube channel, please use the comment section to ask your questions. We'll be on the lookout for those during the live streaming. Without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Faisal for his presentation.
Right, Assalamualaikum. Very good morning. Thanks, John, for moderating this event. Can you listen? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
My self-esteemed colleague Titi Anggraini from Indonesia, long time no see, and Janu from Timor-Leste, Briza from ANFREL, and all participants in this forum. Thanks for having us to share some insights about political rights and movements in Southeast Asia, especially in Malaysia. I think all of you have known now Malaysia, we are occupied with traffic jams because of ASEAN Summit in the upcoming Sunday. And I think it is proper to congratulate our friend from Timor-Leste for being part officially of ASEAN this coming Sunday. So we are honored. Welcome to the ASEAN team. Hopefully, you will contribute for the future to democratize ASEAN more in the future in this struggle for democracy in ASEAN. Okay, about political rights and movement in South Asia, briefly, maybe 10 to 15 minutes. Can you share the next slide? Okay, I start my presentation with reference to the Economic Intelligence Unit (EIU) Democracy Index 2024, where maybe I can address three main concerns out of this index. First of all, if you see this index, none of us from Southeast Asia region regarded as full democracy. So all of us, I mean, majority of us, uh, even though Malaysia was categorized or was put as a highest rank in terms of score points, but still it is regarded as flawed democracy, 7.11, and followed by Timor-Leste, Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, Singapore. So still long way to go, long shot to have a full democracy in Southeast Asia, according to these score points by EIU Democracy Index to 2024. And then secondly, my second concern, out of 10 or 9 countries in Southeast Asia, three of us are regarded as authoritarian, meaning to say I mean, in this region, not all countries in this region, not all nations subscribe the idea of democracy. So that's the second concern, and it may become worse following what happened in Myanmar, for example, election that we, the sham election that they will conduct in December this year, for example, and other things as well that concerning. And then thirdly, it reflects the future of all the challenges for us to insert the democratic norms for Southeast Asia. So how to move forward if we see this trend always happening, where some people might say that democracy is not compatible with the culture of Southeast Asian people and so on. So something that we have to address. We need to put up our effort to fight for the voice of the people through democracy um, that can empower the people. Next slide. All right, thank you. Okay, looking at Malaysia specifically on election or electoral process, according to EIU unit, they put Malaysia in a high score points for election 9.58. I can say that, okay, to put into context for Malaysia election, um, if you look at the surface, or maybe if you look how election is conducted in terms of transparency, I can say that we have been doing better. For example, since 2018, Election Commission allow CSO to be part of the election observers, official election observers, meaning to say, CSO like Bersih, always, being regarded as anti-establishment, allowed to be part of the election observers, so we can access to any kind of rooms, files, and so on. We can take video as when election is conducted. So in terms of transparency, we have been doing better. It allow more transparency in terms of election process, counting process, and not to mention as well about the polling agent, counting agent from different political parties. They are allowed to see, and then the counting process also now being made public, live streaming through Facebook, social media, and so on. So there is no concern a lot about the transparency issues. And plus, indelible ink being imposed for Malaysia, and also the ballot box, the transparent ballot box. So if you compare to during Mahathir's time, maybe in 1980s, 1990s, so a lot of issues of transparency, manipulation of voters, counting system, and so on. But now, as I said, we have been doing better since 2018, and even until now. But the underlying issues still being issues that are not properly addressed by the government. For example, the issue of appointment of election commission chair. Since independent, in our constitution stated that election commission chairs and members being appointed by conference of rulers, but by advice of prime minister. So still there is an influence of prime minister to advise the king and advise the conference of rulers on who will be the next election commission chair and also members. And then the issue of outdated election officers act. We had Election Officers Act since 1951. It is predated Merdeka. So sometimes in terms of language, in terms of the wrongdoings of election being illogical, doesn't make sense because it doesn't uh, suit with the current context of Malaysian society nowadays. Language in terms of sometimes enforcement cannot be enforced because of the timing different. I mean, the relevancy of the time. Now we using the media campaign, social media campaign, and so on. So need the laws need to be revamped so that it suit with the current issues and current dynamic of political landscape. And then apportionment, it is the main issue. One person, one vote, one values. And then access to voting, it is important issue as well that I will share with you about particularly related to Sabah election, advance voting or postal voting for Sabahan and Sarawakian, and then ARC report still being regarded as official secret. So that's the reason why 1 year after Anwar Ibrahim became prime minister, when I was by the media, if you look at the news at the right side, I just simply without hesitate give F to the Anwar's government because during 1 year plus of Anwar's government, there is no specific agenda by the government to address these underlying issues. As I mentioned, the main issue about delineation, about access to voting, Election Officers Act, appointment of chair, and that's the reason why we just simply give failure to the government 1 year after Anwar become the prime minister. Next, okay, I just give you one example about delimitation or issue malapportionment. Now, if you look at the right side, for example, in Selangor is within the KL. I can say it's a city state. We can see the disparity in terms of voting. Uh, After, I mean, during GE15, we can see the ratio is 5.88. Mean because But by comparing one parliament in Selangor, in Bangi, for example, we have 300,000 plus voters as compared to other parliament around 50,000. That's in one particular state, within the same state. But if you compare one parliament in Selangor, for example, in Bangi, we have 300,000 voters, but another parliament in Sarawak, in Igan, only 30,000. So you can see the differences, the disparity, unequal vote shares. One parliament comprised of 300,000 voters, another parliament comprised of just 30,000. So if this kind of malapportionment continues, meaning to say the idea or the principle of one person, one people, one value is meaningless. So there is no justice, there is no equal, voting powers for the people who reside at the urban area, because they have to share with 300,000 to vote one MP as compared to other region, just by having 30,000, they can have one parliament. So, but I believe this issue won't resolve until the next GE, because there are a lot of things that I will share why. So perhaps the next GE, the next general election, we will see the worst ratio, because the increase of the numbers of voters after this, because of the newly voters will be registered as voters, because next GE will be 2 years to come. So maybe we will increase 1 million voters. So it will increase or it will worse the delimitation or the malapportionment. Next. Okay, specific on the Sabah election. Uh, Next 2 week we will have election specifically for Sabah. It related to the east coast of Malaysia. Maybe our friend from Indonesia, from Philippines will have certain knowledge about Sabah election. Basically, these are the issues that being played around for the Sabah election. First, about the Sabah state autonomy. Yes, recently, High Court Sabah issued a decree saying that 40% of the revenue, of the federal revenue that coming from Sabah, need to be given back to Sabah. It started from a civil suit by Sabah Law Society against the state and federal government. But now it depends on the Attorney General whether they want to appeal this particular case or not. So we will wait and see whether they want to file an appeal for this case. And then local party sentiment. Sometimes, this always be the issue. Sometimes political parties always play with the sentiment of you have to vote the local based party, not a party that registered in west coast of Malaysia. And then basic amenities, water, electricity being still always being the main issue. Water and electricity is under the jurisdiction of the state government. So we are not pretty sure why, after decades of having state government, still we have this kind of issues, water and electricity. And then as I said about postal and advanced voting, Bersih, we always advocating for Sabah and Sarawak to be allowed to cast their vote through postal voting or advanced voting, because according to statistic, now we have 200,000 Sabahan who work in west coast of Malaysia. So how can you expect them to go back to Sabah to cast their vote? I don't think there will be enough uh, aeroplane or ship to transport them back. So why not election commission allow them to register as postal voting so they can vote here? I mean, from the west coast, or maybe they can vote through advanced voting instead of expecting them to go back. Otherwise, you will, deny their rights, their sacred rights to vote. And until now, we still fight for it to allow Sabahan to cast their vote through postal voting from west coast of Malaysia. And then corruption or cases against the political parties in Sabah. Until now, it exists, even though some of them being charged in the court, but still there are a lot of things need to be taken into consideration. And then the shifting of political alliance. This also be important to note. If you ask me, what will be the result for Sabah election? I think all of us agree that there won't be any party that win majority. So at the end of the day, there will be a coalition government, same like before as status quo. It is good to have a competitive election, but there is a cost that we have to pay. So in this regard, for example, when there is no political parties that can win majority, so at the end of the day, people will see that the manifesto, their belief, their ideology is meaningless. So they will put aside their manifesto and form government with other political parties. So so what concerns us, maybe sometimes people will see that, oh, there is no point of voting one political party saying that they will do this, do that, do this, believe in certain ideology, because at the end of the day, they will compromise to form uh, coalition government with other political parties. So this, now we are in this kind of issues. Even for the next GE, they might be the same. There is no political party that can gain majority. So at the end of the day, there will be a coalition government. So political ideology, belief, and a manifesto seems to be meaningless when they compromise their manifesto to form government. So this will be the issue of Sabah election. Next, sorry. Okay, for the institutional reform, I think I have to give credit as well to the government. These are the things that they have done. Uh, Especially in terms of stable living. So in 2023, we have abolished mandatory death penalty, and then we also have amended the constitution that allow Malaysian mothers to confer citizenship to their children. And last May, it is a newly reformed when government amend the constitution to revive the Parliamentary Services Act (PSA). PSA, since 1963, we had the PSA to give more autonomy to the Parliament, but during Mahathir's time in 1992, it was abolished. So when it was abolished, so Parliament was put under the executive. But now, just last May, Anwar's government revived back the PSA to give more autonomy to the parliament. So parliament have their own certain powers, not to be put under the executive. And then uh, after that, we have the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Election, and also with the council. So these are the photos that we meet with Prime Minister. Also, we meet with the Minister of Home Affairs, Saifuddin Nasution. So yeah, of course, we say, we are very critical towards any government, but sometimes we have to acknowledge the things that they are doing, even though we always been critical to them because of the slow progress of the reform in Malaysia. Next. Yeah, so these are the key points that we fighting for, that we still push for to be implemented. Separation of power between Attorney General and Public Prosecutor, Political Financing Act. A lot of engagement have been uh, engagement with the government, but still we need the political will from the government to implement this. Term limit for Prime Minister, amendment of Peaceful Assembly Act to give more space for the people. As of now, Anwar announced moratorium for Peaceful Assembly Act. We need to see, whoever want to organize any peaceful assembly, you can do so. Police will not take any action according to this act because it is under moratorium, and government expect to announce or to amend the bill in the parliament by end of this year. But still, we wait and see. We still push the government to amend this law, and then SOSMA and other things. So we hope this kind of things, main reform, key reform, to give more space for the civil liberty in Malaysia. Next. Okay, perhaps this is the main last uh, slide. Okay, these are the challenges for the reform. When we talk about reform in Malaysia, when we talk about um, democratization in Malaysia, we have to bear in mind that we still have the issue of polarization, identity politics, racial hatred in Malaysia. For example, because of uh, social media, when they amplify the algorithm, echo chambers, and so on. So having these challenges of social media, it will actually, some people might see social media will empower democracy, but it is not necessarily true, because so sometimes social media, it hamper or endanger democracy, if I can say that. For example, when we talk about equal apportionment, or equal voting share for parliament, some people using religions or race as reason not to allow to have a fair delineation process, because sometimes some using you know, baseless claim say that Chinese will get more seat, but it is baseless. It is just based on sentiment. So this will hamper, or this will be the main obstacle for having fair delineation in terms of the number of voters in parliament, and also regional and state sentiment. Other than racial issues, we also have this kind of state sentiment. Sarawak, Sabah, Semenanjung, certain states, every state they have their own, political issues. For example, when in Malaysia until now, when certain people in Sarawak, for example, asking for more parliament seat, for us, we are not for that. I mean, because it will contradict with the principle of one person, one vote, one value. As I said just now, for example, one parliament in Sarawak, they have 30,000. So if they want to increase more parliament, do you expect them to have 20,000 voters in one parliament? But in KL, in Kuala Lumpur, we have 300,000. So it is against the principle of one people, one vote, one view. But alternatively, we we suggest them to have one third seat in the Senate. So if they have one third, or if they have more power say in the Senate, they can just block any motion in the parliament that can hamper the rights of Sabah or Sarawak, instead of giving them parliamentary seats, constituency seats, because as I said, it is undemocratic. And then slow progress of reform, as I said, otherwise government still, hesitate to fulfill full reform promise. And then it is important as well to mention about the issue of incompetence of the opposition party. Yeah, in Malaysia, unfortunately, we have incompetence opposition party. They are not pro-reform. They are always, sometimes, most of them uh, play with the racial sentiments, racial issues in Malaysia, and less of them talk about reform. And what they want is just to maybe topple the government, and then become a government. And at the end of the day, no reform. I mean, what can they there is no alternative. What can they offer to be a better government than the current government? So these are the issue as well, because even though we try to engage with opposition, because for us, we are non-partisan. We engage with all people, with the independent MPs, opposition, because what we want to do is for the betterment of the people. Opposition must be empowered, and must show their quality, and also must pro-reform. But still, yet until now, after 3 years of government, yeah, it is very difficult to find competent opposition party to fight for the reform. And then last but not least, about the election. Now, people focusing more on election. As I said, just around the corner we have Sabah election, and then next we will have election for Johor, Melaka, and then and other GE. We will have in 2 years to come general election. So what concerns us, we are afraid we don't have much time to fulfill this reform. Yeah, if we have DG. And last but not least as well, sometimes people in Malaysia see that democracy as a failed project. We're looking at the global trend of democracy, and also people relate the issue of democracy with what happened in Palestine, for example. some people raise the question, democracy failed to protect the oppressed people in Gaza, for example, because people always talk about democracy from the West, but at the end of the day, people in Gaza still suffered the victim of genocide, and democracy is a failure. So that's concern us as well. People play with this kind of issue that we cannot give solid answer to that. Yeah, so I think that's all from me. Can you show the next slide? Next. Okay, that's all from me. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Faisal. I know I said that I will give you a 2-minute warning. I don't have the heart to do that. So please, I will let you talk, but just please be conscious of time. But thank you for that, Faisal. For the next one, I invite Janu to do his presentation. He was tasked to present the post-conflict electoral journey of Timor-Leste that has shaped its democratic identity and shared the lessons from the country's model of participatory governance and civil society engagement. While I prepare to present his slide, I was told that my audio is a bit weak. For those who are watching, please let us know through the comments if you can hear me clearly. If not, let us know. Janu, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, John. Thank you for having me. And so good to see Pa Faisal and also Ibu Titi here. I'll be talking about the journey, so it's so much about the history, so bear with me. We're talking about the post-conflict electoral journey of Timor-Leste. John, if you can move to the next slide. Yes, so basically, as you can see on the slide, I sort of like, bring the informations about the histories of the elections in Timor-Leste. But before we stepping into that, I just want to let you know that Timor is actually operate under the semi-presidential systems, which mean that there is a directly elected president serving a 5-year term as a head of state and also prime ministers leading the government. So elections in Timor, as you may already know, we use proportional representations for parliament with closed list and direct presidential vote. The key date, as you can see from there, we've conducted presidential elections 5 times so far. So the initial one, the first one was actually back in 2002. And then we had one in 2007, 2012, 2017, and also 2022. And the next elections for the presidential elections is expected on 2027. And also, we have parliamentary elections that conducted in 2007, 2012, 2017, and also a snap elections where it happens in 2018 and 2020 elections 2 years ago, and the next elections is expected to happen in 2028. And we in Timor-Leste, even though it's still a new country in Southeast Asia, but we have this National Elections Commission, CNA, and also the Technical Secretariat for Electoral Commissions, TAI, that work independently, and they are tasked to ensure smooth administrations of elections in the country. John, if you can move to the next slide. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about the historical timeline. And I think one other thing that I want to emphasize here is that Timorese people, they don't take voting, they don't take elections for granted. And I think tracing back to the history itself, when we voted for referendum from Indonesia back in the 99, the turnout for the referendum was actually huge. We managed, 86% of the populations managed to go and vote, despite, all those intimidations that happened back then. So it showed that, Timorese, I think, we don't take voting for granted. And again, we conducted our first elections back in 2001 to appointed member of parliament, so the Constituent Assembly elections back in 2001, and as you all know, we full independence on May 20, 2002. And again, as I mentioned in the previous slide, we also established CNA and also STAIE for electoral credibility and also to manage the elections in the country since 2002. And if you move to the next slide, John, on slide 4, a little bit of what happened in the country. Again, we got our referendum, we got independence in 2002, and something a little bit happened in 2006, where the military political unrest led to United Nations missions deployment. But things getting better, resolved through dialogue, paving the successful to 2007 elections. So you can see the time frame between the conflict in 2006 leading to 2007. Timor-Leste still actually managed to conducted a successful elections in 2007. It actually received praises from observers from the EU and also from the United Nations, and of course from civil society at that time. And I think by 2022, democracy in Timor-Leste has consolidated with the United Nations missions left the country back in 2012, and after that we managed to manage our elections by ourselves. And one of the key things that I would like to focus on is that, if you look at the histories of elections in the country, in Timor-Leste, you can see the evolution of stability and also the electoral maturity. Even though it's such a small country, it's such a new country, and it's still very new to democracy, as Abang Faisal mentions, it's ranked number 2nd after Malaysia in Southeast Asia. But I think from my observations is that, there's evolutions to stability and also the electoral maturity within the voters themselves. You see the snap elections that happened in 2018. It's also show that in a way elections sort of strengthened democracy in Timor-Leste. And one of the interesting facts that I would like to actually mention as well, John, if you move to the next slide, is that women candidate in the presidential elections. Obviously, we know that Indonesia has a woman president in the past, and the Philippines. But if you compare to another country in Southeast Asia, women representations in the politics is not so much. If you look at Timor-Leste, even though it's a new country, but there's women participations and leadership has grown so much. You look back at 2007 elections where Lucia Lobato was actually candidating himself to run as a president, and in 2017, Angela Freitas also ran as a president, and in 2022, there are actually 4 candidates who actually ran as a president. So this actually progress, when you compare to another country in Southeast Asia, and I think women participation in politics in Timor-Leste is so much better compared to not only in South Asia, I would say in Asia it's so much better. And the rise of the female candidacies, I think it's also a way to actually stepping forward toward gender equality in Timor-Leste. And I think what the government can do, or what civil society can do, or what we can do is that how can we more support to boost women in electoral success, even though they can candidate themselves, but we also want to see a woman's success in, presidential elections in the futures. And to the next slide as well, I just want to speak a little bit about, women participations in the parliament as well. And in 2024, just last year, women hold 23 out of 65 parliamentary seats. So that means that 35% of the MP in the national parliaments are actually women. And, the peaking side was actually back in 2022 elections where 38.5% of women actually represented in the national parliament. I think this is, we should be giving credit to the government because there's a quota of 1 woman per 3 candidate for the national member of the parliaments. So that's actually one of the one of the achievements that I think the credit should be actually giving to the government. This makes Timor-Leste as the regional leader in the Asia Pacific, demonstrating a commitment to gender balance in the government. And also, John, the next slide, slide 7, talk a little bit about the key success factor of elections in Timor-Leste. And I think one of the things that making elections thrive in Timor-Leste, first of all, is that Timorese, we don't take voting for granted. If you look at the turnout, the higher voter turnout, it's actually one of the highest voter turnout in the world. Ranging from 70 to 86% every elections. That's sort of a way that sending the message that there's actually reflecting trust, and also people also trust the independent elections committees such as CNA and STI, because they are there to actually ensuring transparency. And of course there's actually some challenge that we need to address, but by having all those independent institutions such as CNA and STI that making sure that the transparency is there. And also one of the things that make elections success in the country, of course, obviously you need to give the credit to the people and also to the government, but also we cannot forget the international support. For example, a lot of international support from the UN and also from the EU in Timor-Leste, in providing training, and also sending independent observers to actually monitoring the elections. And one of the things that I would like to add into that, civil society in Timor is actually very bright. Looking at the Philippine case, I think Timor-Leste, in a way, the civil society there is very much can keep check and balances, and also a lot of voter educations leading up to the election sort of play a key role in how the voter turnouts always high in Timor-Leste. But despite all of this, I also want to mention some of the challenges that the country we're facing, and I think you may all know the political gridlock from 2017 to 2020. Sort of minority government led the budget disputes and opposition's bloc, and resolved to the 28 snap elections and also coalition shift. The sort of in a way testing the democratic systems in Timor-Leste, but somehow it went well. Somehow the government and the people can actually manage to overcome that. And also one of the biggest challenges, one of the main challenges that we still facing is that we're so much reliance on economic resilience. We so much rely on oil. I think that can also poses a challenge, a risk in the futures when the oil money depleted, and also youth employment. If you look at youth employment in Timor, is actually very high in Southeast Asia, and 40% of our populations actually consists of youth. So you can see that youth employment is actually one of the main challenges that the Timor-Leste government is actually facing. And look at the corruptions. If you look at the corruption index survey back in 2024, the CPI we only rank 73 out of 180 country survey. So that's sort of the challenge that the government actually have to look at and have to address that one as well. And political rights in Timor, John, if you looking at the next slide, I will say political rights, obviously are vital for democracies. It's actually enabling active government participations in Timor-Leste democratization journey since 2022. When it comes to political rights, and I think we've held competitive elections and also peaceful power transitions have occurred since 2002 up until today. But even though some democratic institutions still remain weak due to conflict of among independence movement leaders, that's according to the Freedom House. But political rights, is still, when you compare to some other countries all over the world, we're still doing better. Freedom House report scored Timor-Leste 72 out of 100 for political rights and civil liberties. They sort of show dedications that Timor-Leste actually still uphold or still care for political rights. And also, as Bang Faisal mentions, in the beginning, Kuala Lumpur is very busy, but it's also very busy in Timor as we prepare ourselves to become an official member of ASEAN. As a matter of fact, on Sunday, there will be a big celebrations in Dili celebrating Timor-Leste as 11th state of ASEAN member state. And as you already know, it takes a long journey to become a member of ASEAN. On slide 10, John, if you can move to the next slide, Road to ASEAN's has been started back in 2011. So finally, it will happen. I think on the 26th of October this month will be officially become a member of ASEAN after 14 years of effort. And of course, there's still the challenge there, but we're hoping that by becoming member of ASEAN, we can learn from the other 10 countries on how to grow. And also, just a little bit of I think, John, if you move to the last slide, sorry, to the slide 11 on Road to ASEAN, I just want to have a look a little bit about this one, where Timor-Leste ASEAN membership will be granted officially. And also, one of the things that I would like to mention is that, this gives so much opportunity to us, to Timor-Leste. For example, this opens access to $3 trillion market that ASEAN has, and also improve our security and also cooperations. And it's projected that 5 to 10% of annual GDP will boost Timor-Leste economy. Sort of that can actually mark in a new area despite ongoing poverty and infrastructure challenge that we currently facing at the moment. So in my personal observations, I believe that by becoming member of ASEAN will give a lot of economic benefit to the country itself. And to conclude, to be mindful of my time, and then we can open for discussions, I just want to make a conclusions that even though Timor-Leste is went through a post-conflict electoral path, but it's actually demonstrated a striking shift from a turmoil to a strengthening democracy. As I mentioned in the beginning of my presentation, so since the 1999 independence vote, we don't take elections for granted. People really go out and vote. And if you look at the histories of elections in the countries, there's a lot of electoral success. Not only praise the electoral success results not only coming internally from Timor-Leste or civil society organizations in Timor-Leste, but it's actually getting acknowledgement from civil society outside Timor-Leste and also government outside of Timor-Leste. And again, the high turnout of voters in Timor-Leste, sort of indicating that trust indicator or trust toward the elections is still very much there. And one of the things that I would like to emphasize is that there's participations from all sectors in the elections, especially I mentioned in my slide, there's women, representations, women, be able to candidate themselves to run for presidents. So it showed that the maturities, the openness, and also inclusions or inclusivity in the Timor-Leste government is actually there. And of course, by becoming or joining ASEAN, we're hoping to learn more for countries like Indonesia or Malaysia or the Philippines on how to actually manage the elections or conduct the elections so much better. I think I yield my time, and thank you so much for listening. Thank you, John.
You are still muted, John.
I am still muted. Thank you for letting me know. No? uh, to be juggling slides and speaking is confusing. But last but not the least, of course, is Titi, who will share insights on how the Prabowo administration has influenced the democratic landslides in Indonesia a year after Prabowo took over as president. I think he celebrated his first year in the administration, no? And talk about the key tension points in governance, reform, and public accountability amid rising protests and civic pushback. Titi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, John. Assalamualaikum. Good morning, everyone. Thank you to ANFREL, Briza, and the team for the invitation to join today's webinar. I'm so excited to meet online with John, Faisal, and Janu. It's been such a long time since we last met. Next slide, please. Yeah. The first year of the Prabowo administration represents a critical political transition for Indonesia, following one of the most contentious elections in 2 decades. The 2024 election was disrupted by concerns about institutional neutrality, misuse of state resources, and judicial controversies that blur the distinction between legality and legitimacy. Although public expectation for political stability remain high, the indicators of democratic quality point in the opposite direction. We have seen a weakening of the opposition, reduced accountability, and shrinking civic freedoms, signaling the persistence of democratic regression despite a stable electoral process. This context set the stage for understanding how power has been consolidated under the new administration and what that means for reform and resistance in Indonesia's democracy. And over the past year, President Prabowo's administration has experienced 4 waves of cabinet reshuffle. The latest in September 2025. This reshuffles reflects ongoing adjustment within the ruling coalitions, balancing political interests, accommodating new allies, and consolidating executive control. At the same time, the government has launched several flagship social programs designed to strengthen its popular legitimacy. This includes the free school meal program, the Merah Putih Cooperative, and the People's School Initiative. So, in short, cabinet reshuffles and populist flagship programs illustrate how Prabowo's first year in power has been defined by coalition balancing, symbolic welfare expansion, and strategic power consolidation. Next slide. So this is a comparative of democracy and election assessment in Indonesia for 2024, but the data released in 2025. This table summarizes 3 major international assessment of Indonesia's democracy in 2024. All of them from the Economist Intelligence Unit, the FIDEM project, and the Electoral Integrity Project point to the same conclusion. Indonesia is experiencing a serious democratic downturn. For example, the Economist classifies Indonesia as a flawed democracy, facing electoral democratic regression, and then it also highlights the centralization of power, the erosion of check and balances, and the controversial constitutional court ruling that allow the vice presidential candidacy of Gibran Rakabuming Raka, the son of President Jokowi or Joko Widodo, benefiting the ruling bloc. FIDEM project is even more alarming. FIDEM classifies Indonesia as undergoing a democratic breakdown, placing Indonesia in the electoral autocracy category, for the first time since reformasi or reformation. The electoral integrity project shows a sharp decline in Indonesia's electoral integrity score from 66 in 2019 to 47 in 2024. The report underscores the growing influence of money politics, the unclear legal standards, and new restriction under the revised criminal code, all of which threaten freedom of expression in Indonesia. Next, John, please. Yeah. This slide, Corruption Perception Index or CPI 2024 Indonesian status with ASEAN comparison. So turning to corruption perception, Transparency International CPI 2024 reveals that Indonesia ranks 99th globally with a score of 37. Within ASEAN countries, Indonesia's position is below Vietnam and far behind Malaysia and our young brother in Timor-Leste. Yeah. This means that Indonesia continues to struggle with systemic corruption, politicization of law enforcement, and opaque campaign financing, even as a formal institution remain intact. I think we can continue with next slide, John. So the 2024 election resulted in a sweeping consolidation of power under President Prabowo Subianto and the Indonesia Onward Coalition, Koalisi Indonesia Maju in Bahasa Indonesia, or KIM. Nearly all major political parties, including Gerindra, Golkar, PKB, PAN, Demokrat, Nasdem, and PKS, joined the governing bloc. Among 8 political parties in parliament in Indonesian DPR, Dewan Perwakilan Rakyat, only the Indonesian Democratic Party of Struggle or PDIP remain outside the ruling coalition with 110 out of 580 parliamentary seats. But however, this is the uniqueness of Indonesia, yeah. PDIP refrains from calling itself the opposition, preferring the term balancer, emphasize its intention to evaluate government performance proportionally and fairly. This situation gives the government a super-majority of approximately 470 seats, or equal to 81.03%, leaving less than 20% of parliament outside the coalitions. The new parliament therefore functions under a dominant executive environment with limited check and balances. Next slide, John, please. So as you can see on screen, PDIP in red remains the single largest party, gaining 16.7% of the national vote, yet standing alone outside the Indonesia Onward Coalition or KIM. The KIM bloc in light blue, composed of Prabowo's Gerindra and allied parties, dominates parliament with around 470 seats, ensuring strong executive control over legislative processes. This balance of power represents a continuation and expansion of Jokowi coalition model, now rebranded and reinforced under Prabowo's leadership. The inclusion of almost every major party in the governing coalition is designed to ensure political stability and legislative compliance, but it also narrows the space for democratic contestation. What is the impact on our political situation, which such overwhelming dominance parliament risks turning into a rubber stamp, as policy deliberation are largely shaped by executive party negotiation rather than open debate. This configuration exemplifies what scholars describe as extreme coalitional presidentialism, where the president governs through inclusion, co-optation, and patronage rather than through ideological alignment or programmatic reform. Next slide, John, please. Yeah. So this is the comparison of cabinet size. The slide shows the comparison of cabinet size across Indonesia's presidents since the reform era. As we can see on slide, previous presidents, Habibie, the first president during the Reformasi era, to Joko Widodo, maintain cabinets ranging between 33 and 37 ministers. Under Prabowo administration, however, the number has jumped dramatically to 49 ministers, the largest in Indonesia's modern history. This expansion reflects a clear strategy of power accommodations. The cabinet is designed to include almost every major political party, forming what is often called as super coalition. While this broad inclusion ensures political stability and parliamentary dominance, it also raises a serious question about the efficiency of governance and accountability. With such an oversized cabinet, decision-making becomes complex and requires a large budget. So in short, the growing number of ministers symbolize Prabowo's approach to consolidating power through inclusion and patronage, rather than through ideological or programmatic alignment. Next slide, John, please. Yeah. This image, the left side, captures one of the large-scale demonstration that erupted across Indonesia in August 2025. One of the immediate triggers was public outrage over the significant increase in housing and allowance benefits for members of parliament, approved amid ongoing economic pressures on ordinary citizens. The decision was widely seen as insensitive and elitist, coming at a time when living costs were rising and state resources were being heavily allocated to populist programs rather than institutional reforms. These protests held in major cities such as Jakarta, Bandung, Medan, and Yogyakarta, Makassar, brought together students, labor unions, academics, and civil society organizations. They denounced what they call it the crisis of moral leadership, criticizing how public funds were used to expand political comfort rather than strengthen democratic accountability. Beyond the allowance controversy, the demonstration also reflected broader concerns. First, the decline in trust in parliament and executive institution. Second, concerns over eroding civil liberties and tightening control over dissent, especially after the adoption of new criminal code provision on public expression. And third, perceived economic inequality, as populist welfare schemes were viewed as short-term political tools rather than structural solution. And at the right image on the slide comes from Amnesty International Indonesia, highlighting the aftermath of the August 2025 demonstration. According to their report, police continued to detain 8 activists following the protests. Their names are listed on the screen, including Del Pedro Marhen, Executive Director of Lokataru Foundation, colleagues of Haris Azhar. Amnesty also noted that by September 24, 2025, at least 950 other individuals remain in detention. So this indicates that the state response to civic mobilization has become increasingly repressive, with mass arrests, prolonged detention, and criminalization of protests. Next slide, John, please. So how about the electoral reform agenda in Indonesia? The electoral bill or RUU Pemilu, Rancangan Undang-Undang Pemilu, has been officially included in Indonesia's 2026 Priority Legislative Program or Prolegnas. This legislative plan represents an institutional response to Constitutional Court Decision number 135 year 2024, which order the separation of national and local election effective from the next electoral cycle. So this is a landmark decision of Constitutional Court. Actually, this ruling is the result of a judicial review petition filed by Perludem. The court decision fundamentally changed the architecture of Indonesia's electoral governance, requiring adjustment in the timing, administration, and legal framework for both national and subnational contests. As a result, the upcoming electoral bill aims to synchronize legal norms and prevent overlapping electoral timelines that could burden the election commission and compromise electoral integrity. But beyond technical adjustment, the electoral bill has reopened a broader debate about the design of Indonesia's electoral system. Civil society organizations, including Perludem, NetGrid, and various academic networks, have been actively advocating for transition from the current open list proportional system toward a mixed electoral system, or what we call it a system campuran, ya, the combination between first past the post and closed list proportional representation. They argue that the open list system has intensified intra-party competition, money politics, and candidate personalization. A mixed system believed will balance party accountability and voter representation, strengthen constituency ties, and reduce electoral cost and corruption incentive. Next slide, John, the last slide. So the conclusion, the final slide captures the central message of Indonesia's current democratic condition. The country today stands between power consolidation and civic resistance, between a government that increasingly centralized authority and a society that continues to push back to defend democratic values. The next few years will be decisive. Whether Indonesia slides further into democratic decline or revives its reformist spirit will depend on how institutions respond to public pressure and how citizens sustain their vigilance. Ultimately, the Indonesian experience reminds us that guarding democracy is not just about holding regular election. It is about ensuring that laws, institutions, and citizens remain free to question and hold power accountable. I think I will stop here. Thank you so much, John.
Thank you for that, Titino. I just can't help but notice you shared a table about the corruption index, and among the four of us here, my country is the lowest, the Philippines, which is 114th in that index. Uh, that's not a really good look for us. But I know in the interest of time, we have follow-up questions after the presentation. So, but I will have just two follow-up questions for the three of you. My first follow-up question is, as Janu mentioned earlier, before we started this webinar, um, and you know about this as well in Malaysia, that as the ASEAN Summit is happening this weekend, you know. I just wanted to ask, of course, Timor-Leste is going to be part of ASEAN soon. So how can ASEAN best support the country in upholding democratic standards within a more diverse regional landscape? We know it's ASEAN's a bit um, difficult to, not really difficult, but it is a bit more challenging because of certain norms, particularly about non-interference. But then, of course, there is regional cooperation and collaboration. And I just wanted to know your take on how best ASEAN could support the country in upholding countries in ASEAN members in upholding democratic standards within a more diverse regional landscape. Who would like to go first?
Yeah, I think many potentials that Timor-Leste can learn from the regions.
Uh-huh.
I think one of the key points, as Faisal presented, is that um, you know digital tools, right? And I think actually uh, happen all over in Timor. When you look at the Leste, definitely not the same as Malaysia, definitely not the same as Singapore, or definitely not the same as Indonesia. Investing in technologies when it comes to use of digital tools and education, people participate. As our colleague from Malaysia, a lot of you know during or before the elections campaign, something that I actually need to address. How, especially people have to what they find mainly through Facebook or what. So I think those investment in or in technology that Timor can learn from the other 10 regions. But more importantly, John, I think always always there. What we can learn, being a member of ASEAN, ASEAN definitely
Pak Janu, I think your voice
Audio
is
is,
not
yeah.
so clear. Yeah,
Yes.
maybe the
Can,
signal
mm-hmm.
Is it clear now?
Yes.
better.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the other things that we can do is that having Timor-Leste human rights group, I, CHR. I think this is something that Timor-Leste can actually. So and also I think the other way around is I mentioned in my presentation. Elections in Timor-Leste has been successful. You have freedom of opinions. I actually learn from as well. And also
Right.
having women elections. Just a lot of presidential elections. Kind
Janu, can I just cut you for a while? We wanted to hear you clearly. I think your audio is breaking a bit. Um, I'm not sure how you can resolve that, but can you just speak closer to the microphone and maybe I don't know.
is it clear now?
It's breaking a bit. It's a bit in yeah.
I think it's the connection. I think,
It's the
yeah,
connection. I
yeah.
understand.
Faisal or Mbak, you want to take from here?
Yes, maybe Faisal or Titi can take the question first. I think it has to do with the connection. No, that's why the audio is a bit
Yes.
breaking. Yes, Faisal.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
clear.
yeah. I think for ASEAN, yeah, as I mentioned, I think it is necessary for us to think about developing the regional norms for democracy. Um, it is not something binding because, yeah, as we know, ASEAN we have this no interference, and everything must be in consensus. But there must be a step forward or step ahead to improve democracy. For example, having these regional norms, for example, maybe we can leverage or extend the networkings among parliamentarians, for example, for Southeast Asia, to issue joint statement or even to have more empowered committee democracy. For example, parliamentarian for democracy in ASEAN, for example, how can member of parliament in Southeast Asia fight for democracy, and then to empower or maybe to have more platform for CSO under ASEAN to talk or to keep talking about democracy way forward. And I think it is kind of networking. And then as Janu said as well about digital, how can we leverage digital to empower democracy for Southeast Asia?
Titi.
Um, can you hear me, John?
We can hear you. Yes.
Yeah, before I respond specifically on ASEAN, yeah, I would like
Mm-hmm.
to add the specific information, the current development in Indonesia,
Mm-hmm.
especially on the military involvement in civic space, yeah, civil
Mm-hmm.
space. So recently we have the new law in Indonesia, the enactment of the latest military law or TNI law, law number 3 year 2025 marks a significant turning point in Indonesia's civil military relations. While the government justified the law as a step to modernize defense management, many observers view it as a serious setback to post reform democratic consolidation. The law expands the military authority beyond traditional defense functions, allowing active duty officers to hold civilian government positions and to be deployed in non-defense sectors such as disaster response, state-owned enterprise, and domestic security. These new provisions effectively reverse key principles of military reform established after 1998 when Indonesia committed to separating the armed force or TNI from politics and civilian administration. So related to the Indonesian situation, John, I think in short, if we are talking about ASEAN and its vision, yeah,
Mhm.
ASEAN, we hope that ASEAN not merely derivative of economic growth only, yeah, but also give more deliberation on democratic development in its countries or its members, yeah, and how they can respond more to the situation within its members, including the rise of military actors in country like Indonesia. I think that's my response, John.
Thank you. We would like to give Janu a chance to speak again. I know you mentioned about digital tools as a way to improve democratic participation. Maybe you can continue. Let's see if the audio works right now.
Is it working okay now, John?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, and I was actually like, I think there's a growing trend in Timor-Leste where people, receive mostly the information from social media, especially like when it comes to elections, during the campaign. So I think, by investing in um, education and technology, in a way how we can learn from countries like Malaysia or Singapore or even Indonesia on how to use digital tools and educations to help people participate more. Um, how to actually prevent all those hoaxes leading up to the election or leading up to political candidates and presidential candidates and stuff like that. So I think this is something that we can actually learn, by having becoming a member of ASEAN. And also, I would like to add into that, and I think there's always a room to learn about human rights and also promoting human rights. And ASEAN has its group on its human rights group, AICHR, and I think Timor Leste can actually benefit from that as well, John.
Okay. Thank you, Janu. Now it's clearer. As I
Thank
said,
you, thank you.
just in the interest of time, I'll have my one last question before we let you guys go. As ASEAN moves toward its vision 2045, I know in one of our episodes, in one of our podcast episodes, it has been mentioned that in the vision 2045, um, the upholding democratic standards was not even mentioned. That's unfortunate. But then we wanted to ask, what reform should be prioritized to strengthen political participation in the region? And maybe, hopefully, leaders will be able to hear us. No? Who would like to go first?
Yeah, if I may.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think for the ASEAN, the main priority is to ensure that there won't be any violence in this region, especially when it comes to conflict. For example, what happened in Myanmar, it is terrible. People who are holding democracy is still under detention. And then now on the 28th of December, there will be a sham election by the junta, which will say, together with all international agencies, we have called ASEAN government not to participate, to be observer or to acknowledge that election. So uh, perhaps our utmost priority is to ensure that there is no violence, there is no um, atrocities in this region, and we need to move one step further ahead to ensure that, for example, particularly in Myanmar's situation, there will be a peace transition towards more democratic or more peace government. And then after that, uh, we can talk more about the democracy in Southeast Asia.
Mhm. Thank you, Faisal. I've seen the statement of Bercy about it because I think the Myanmar junta has
Yeah.
issued a statement that supposedly Malaysia is observing the elections, and then there is a decision point at the ASEAN summit whether or not, with the extension of invitation to the ASEAN itself to observe the upcoming elections in Myanmar,
Mhm,
to
mhm.
decide whether or not the countries would be sending um, observers for it. But I know Bercy has urged its government, the Malaysian government, to not observe the elections in Myanmar. Thank you. Titi, yes, go ahead,
Yeah.
please.
I think there are four reform priorities stand out for ASEAN. Yeah, the first is reasserting civilian control over the military through strong parliamentary and judicial oversight mechanisms. Second, I still believe that credible and independent election commissions still the fundamental requirements for democratic elections. By learning from the Indonesian situation, with the increasing influence to the election commission, ASEAN must give its attention, yeah, to the independence of the election commission. That's the second agenda. And the third one is institutionalizing participatory policy making, from local consultation to citizen assemblies to rebuild public trust, because the phenomena in Indonesia, how we face broken linkage between the representative and its constituent, yeah. Uh, the the the, the this uh, what the distortion on policy making between the public aspirations with the policy made by our representative.
Mhm.
And then the last one is, I think, safeguarding civic and digital freedoms as the fundamental factors for meaningful political participation and regional democratic resilience. We have to strengthen our network through civil society, and also encourage the functioning of ASEAN bodies or assemblies.
Mhm.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Titi. No, I agree with all your points, but particularly about rebuilding public trust. I think with the recent protests that we've seen, people expressing their frustration with the government, particularly with allegations of corruption, I guess, and in many other things as well. No, rebuilding trust, public trust in institutions, in government, in democratic institutions is important. Last but not the least, Janu, please go ahead.
Thank you, John. I actually second Bam Faisal comment on that one. I think we need to have like basic standard, but most importantly, ensure fair elections, rule of law, and human rights for all members of ASEAN, while respecting differences. And I think this is something that I think moving forward, if the prioritized revisions 2045 is so, fair elections, rule of law, and human rights for all members while respecting the differences, John, if that makes sense.
I agree. I second the motion. Thank you, Janu, for that short yet sweet answer. I know we've kept you more than we've promised to have you on this webinar, but thank you again, Faisal, Titi, and Janu, for sharing your insights, very valuable insights this morning. Um, Thank you for joining us in this webinar. No? I would have to hide you from this stream so that I can formally close this program. But thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Batiti. Thank you, Bang
Thank
Faisal.
you, John,
Uh,
Pak Janu, and Bang
thank you.
Faisal. See you again.
Yes, see you
See
again.
you guys again.
Assalamualaikum.
Bye bye.
See you.
Have a great. Bye.
Yes, and that has been the second part of the two-part webinar on political rights and movements in ASEAN, and where we provided election updates and regional democratic trends in Southeast Asia. I have been your moderator for this morning's webinar. I'm John Reyno Antiquera. Um, on behalf of my colleague who hosted the first part of this webinar. Mr. Rana, Manjesh Rana. We would like to thank everyone again for joining us in this webinar series. We hope to be able to discuss more about election trends and democratic updates in the region, not just in Southeast Asia, but in the rest of Asia, hopefully in the coming episodes of our podcast. And in other engagements, we hope to see you again. Thank you again for joining us. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.